But people on the other side of the planet in a totally different religion can say equally about their own scriptures and beliefs and certainty. How do we know we're right and they're wrong? Like, there's got to be something more. And it did not go well in my home.
I am here today with David Michaels. Hello, David.
Hello.
David is an actor, writer, and director in Los Angeles, and he's had a lifetime of spiritual experiences, starting with a pre-birth memory. He's had spiritually transformative experiences, just a really wide range of things that we're going to dive into today, and I'm really excited about it. So thank you for joining me, David.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I'm genuinely excited and honored to be here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, as we were saying before we started, I'm so glad that you reached out. So maybe we could start at the beginning. So you have a glimpse of a pre-birth memory, which I would love to hear about.
Yeah. So as far back as I can remember, in this human body, this Earth lifetime memory, going back to childhood, I've always had this memory / awareness / understanding. I was raised in a very devout Catholic home. And religion was like a big part of our lives. We went to church every Sunday. We listened to the Catholic radio station. Later, when I was a teenager, I actually led a Bible study group. It was a big part of my life. A lot of Catholics are like, oh, we show up on Christmas and Easter, but not in my family. It was a big part of our lives. So, as a kid, I had no reason to question or doubt what my religion told me, what my parents told me. You just take it as fact. And I had been taught that when the sperm meets the egg, the moment of conception, that's when God creates the soul and it binds it to that embryo. And that's when you come into existence as a soul. The problem is that didn't match what I always kind of felt and had this awareness, understanding of. I'm like, no, I feel like I've existed prior to this body for a long time. And when I would look into that, it's like, well, where was I? What was it like? Where do I come from? It's not as clear as if you were watching a movie or something. It's more just kind of a vague understanding, a vague memory of where I come from is what most people would probably describe as like heaven. There's a lot of bright light. It's very warm. It's very loving. There's a lot of people there. Everyone's friendly and gets along, and we love and celebrate each other and have a good time. You're really close to God / the light / source, whatever label you want to use there. I actually see God as more of a light than like an old man with a beard, judging us from the clouds kind of thing. It's more of a consciousness, an awareness, something that's intelligent and loving, but doesn't have a specific labeled, narrow defined form like you and I do in a body. So yeah, I just remember coming from there, and that I'm normally non-physical. It feels weird for me to be in a body. It feels compressed and slow and thick, and I'm just I'm squeezed into clothes that are too tight, that don't fit right. And it just feels a little weird whenever I think about it. I'm like, yeah, this body is, I don't know. You have to sleep every day. You have to eat all the time. It's so weird to me. And you think after 40 something years of life, you get used to it, and you do when you don't think about it. But the minute I tune into the soul side of me, I'm just like, yeah, I'm not used to having a physical form. And any of this pre-life memory just saying that prior to this body, I existed for a long time, mostly in a non-physical state of being, whatever that means. Now, I have a lot of spiritual friends who believe in reincarnation, and they're like, oh, I've been reincarnating on Earth for all these lifetimes, and everybody reincarnates. And I'm like, so I would look into my soul's memory and be like, okay, well, what are some of my past lives? And I wouldn't find any on Earth. I really feel like this is my first time on planet Earth. I don't feel any special affinity to any particular locations or periods in history or anything like that. I think Earth is a beautiful planet. I love humans. I'm here to help. And I just don't feel like I've been here before. Like I've always had this feeling like I'm just visiting.
Wow. As you're sharing your memory, I'm just silently saying yes to everything because it's so similar to mine.
Yeah. Now I do, if I look back far enough, I feel like I've had bodies before. It's just rare. It's not common for me. And there's a big gaps in between where I'm staying on the spirit side. And whatever those prior physical forms were either on another planet, which I think now we know enough about the universe. Like the galaxy is filled with planets around almost every star, right? So odds are there's probably other life out in the universe. I don't think we're alone at all. So either I had a body as some other creature on some other planet, or if I have been on Earth before, it was so long ago, like it's just the planet was unrecognizable compared to today. Like the
Mm,
continents were different and humans hadn't evolved yet, something like that.
that's fascinating. Do you have any memory or idea of why you may have chosen to come at this specific time?
That's a great question. I know that it was very intentional. I know it was voluntary completely, that I came here by choice as a volunteer. I know that the timing was pretty specific. Like there was a window of like a few years of when I could have been born, and anything before that would be too early. Anything later than that would be too late. I don't know why, but I just have those details that there was intention and specificity to all this. And I also know this is something later when I was like a teenager. I was talking to my angels, my spirit guides, and they were kind of filling in some missing pieces. And one of the things they told me was that, yes, I came here by choice, that there was a lot I wanted to do, that I tried packing in a ton of stuff into one human lifetime. And they said, realistically, it's more than is practical or plausible to do. And that I knew that going in. And I probably wasn't going to be able to get it all done, but my angel assured me I would get all the big important stuff done. The priorities would be accomplished. It was just, I was like, while I'm here, since this is such a rare thing for me, it's like, I want to just scoop it all in and experience as much as possible.
So many people tell me that they if they can remember the process of planning their life. I just talked to Betty Guadagno, and she has a pre-birth memory, and she said she was like she was walking through a grocery store and just scooping boxes off shelves.
Oh,
And
yeah, I'm familiar with her story. Yes. Yeah,
yes,
she works in recovery now, right? And she's part of
yes,
IANS and stuff. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I loved her story. And she remembers more of those vivid visual details than I do. For me, it's just just more informational.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. And it's funny too, because it does fit my personality. Because I remember being like a little kid and I would take my toys into the living room or something. I would carry so many different toys in my hands where it was like overflowing and like spilling out and but I couldn't just make two trips. It's like I try to have so many things that I all wanted to play with or might want to play with or something. And I just had I overloaded it and I was like, this is unpractical. My hands are only so big, but I tried anyway.
So a question that comes up for me is you have this memory, even as a young child, that you existed before this life. And yet you were raised in the Catholic Church. So how did those two things fit together for you as a child?
They didn't. So, for the most part, it was just well, something doesn't fit or make sense here, but I didn't know what to do with that. And when I was younger, certainly I just sided with my parents and my church and priests and stuff like that. And like, because you trust them, you're a kid, that's what you do. But when I kind of hit my mid-teens, I really started deep diving, investigating my beliefs more thoroughly. Now that I have a little bit more critical thinking and a little more awareness of the world, and I've studied scriptures more and that kind of stuff, for me, it was very important. It was a major drive in my soul. I had to know what was spiritually real, spiritually possible, spiritually true. I didn't want to believe something just because I grew up in it, because I was raised in it, because everyone around me believed it. I wanted to know that this was real, that I could rely on it. Like if my life depended on this belief, that I know I could count on it being true. And if it wasn't real or true, that would suck. That would be a whole identity shift and, paradigm change of my whole life, it's uncomfortable, it's painful, it's not easy to go through that, to have a whole identity change. But to me, it was more important to know what was real and true. And if what I was believing wasn't true at all, or only partially true, if there was more to the story, whatever the case was, I needed to know for myself and find out now so that I could start to live more aligned with the truth going forward. So thus began a long journey of seeking and learning and studying and asking a lot of questions. Well, why do we believe what we believe? And everyone around me be like, well, because the Bible says so, or my experiences tell me, or I'm just certain of it. And I'm like, okay, cool. But people on the other side of the planet in a totally different religion can say equally about their own scriptures and beliefs and certainty. How do we know we're right and they're wrong? Like, there's got to be something more. And it did not go well in my home,
Oh
because
no.
my parents are like, religion's a big part of their life. My mom even runs a ministry. Like, this is their big part of their identity. And here I am, like, challenging our beliefs and questioning things. And at first they were patient, like, oh, it's good, you're owning your faith. This is an important step everyone needs to go through. You'll be strong in your faith after you go through this. The problem was I wasn't going in the direction they were hoping I would.
Right.
And I was taking too long to, quote, find their God. So it started leading to conflict and just unpleasant lack of peace. So I remember when I was 15, 16 years old, writing in my journal. It's like, keep a journal all these years. I'm like, you know what? This is for the sake of peace and harmony and that kind of thing. I need to temporarily just put this on pause, shut it down for now. Just go to church, don't question, just blindly believe. And I made a promise to myself that once I'm living on my own, that I would pick up where I left off and continue my search, my quest. I can tell you honestly, 2 weeks after I moved into my first apartment, bam, I was back at it. And I was in college at that point, and it was a good sized university. And they had, like, every Wednesday, all the student organizations would set up like a table or booth at like this one part of campus along a sidewalk. And there were lots of different religious organizations on campus too. There was every flavor of Christianity and Mormons and everybody else. And you had the Jews, you had atheists, you had, like, everybody was on there. I think there was even pretty sure there's a Buddhist group, maybe a Hindu group. And I would just go to one table after another, be like, well, tell me, what do you believe and why? Why do you think it's true? And I was just so curious. I was a sponge, just soaking it all up. And I started out as like a psychology major in college, and I later switched to world religions and got a very formal, structured education there too. And what I eventually learned, and I don't want to offend anyone here, but what I learned through all of that was religion is an invention of humans. It is a set of rules and doctrines and scriptures and stuff that we humans have glimpsed the unexplainable and the divine, the supernatural, and try to make sense of it. And religions, if you look at their history, are always like borrowing concepts from each other and influencing how they shape over time. So spirituality, relationship with the divine, that's real. But the organized structure of religion is an invention of humans.
So, wow, I'm fascinated by that you went to school to study world religions. I have a huge interest in understanding how all the religions evolved, and also if there's any were there any common themes that you saw through all of them that you could point to and say that's probably the heart of it?
Yeah, what you do is you look at not the specific rules or dogma of religions, or we believe this and not that. You look at the ideals that the religions all aspire to. And most religions hold as the highest values things like love, forgiveness, empathy, kindness, doing good to others, and taking care of the sick and the poor and the weak and things like that. These high values that, regardless of how you get there, what the teaching says is the right way to do it. Like, this is the best way to be human. This is the things we aspire to become and to live and embody.
I love that. Okay, so you began seeking for the truth, and after you left your home and then you went to school and studied world religions? And then where did you end up after that?
So to try to tell this story as quickly as possible. So I started out Catholic, but not even a traditional Catholic, because in the 70s, I want to say, my parents were part of the charismatic movement
Mhm.
in the Catholic Church, which is kind of like a Pentecostal version of Catholicism. So
Wow.
it was just a much more lively version and manifesting spiritual gifts and connecting to the Holy Spirit and that kind of stuff, the praying in tongues and miraculous healing and all that kind of stuff. So that was always an influence in my flavor of Catholicism that I was raised in. And then I kind of, as my journey continued, I'm like, okay, you know what? I started calling myself interdenominational because all the different Christian denominations, it's like, okay, we all believe in Jesus and we're all basically aspiring to and teaching the same things. We just disagree on some finer points about how we interpret certain scriptures. So I didn't align myself with any one particular denomination. I just call myself interdenominational. But then fast forward years and more learning and experiences, and I'm like, okay, you know what? There's more. Even if 100% of Christian beliefs are true, it doesn't mean they have 100% of the truth. So I discovered there's more to life outside that religious construct that I was discovering and experiencing. I started meeting friends with psychic abilities, and they taught me a lot and opened up different things. And I started learning about reincarnation and getting very convincing evidence that this does happen, even though I was raised to believe it doesn't. Because I my whole life been able to talk to my angels and connect with God and quote hear them talking back. It's not like an audible voice. It's something you feel in your heart that translates into words in your head. And I would ask, I'd pray, I'd connect in and be like, well, is reincarnation true? Does this happen? I don't want to come back to Earth, you know. And I was told that God is unconditionally loving and God loves us, and love is about freedom, about choice, about giving opportunities. And if someone wants or needs to reincarnate for whatever reason, God's not going to get in the way of that. It's an option for us, for our growth, for our healing, for our adventure and discovery, for a variety of reasons. I don't think there's no one size fits all. I think we all have different reasons why we're here, what we're hoping to get out of a lifetime, if you reincarnate or not. There might be some people who are like one and done. There might be some people who are here for thousands of times. I think it really is unique to the individual soul, but we live in a free universe. We live in a reality of free will where I think God basically created this giant sandbox for us. He's like, go play, be who you want to be, explore, evolve, grow, learn about love, and figure out who you want to be and who you want to become as an individual soul and being. And reincarnation is one tool to do that.
Mm. I love that. So you've mentioned a couple of times that you were able to communicate with your angels and guides. When did that start for you? Were you pretty young?
Yeah, it's a cute, funny little story. So I don't know my exact age. I'm guessing somewhere around 5, 7 years old or so, give or take. And I had this toy box in my closet where I would just dump all my random Ninja Turtles and like Transformers and other toys I played with as a kid. One day I was scooping up a bunch of toys to bring out to the living room to play with. And one of the toys I had was a vehicle the Ninja Turtles could ride. It was called a pizza thrower. And I don't know if anyone out there listening remembers this toy, but you would load in these little plastic pizza discs and you push a button and it would like shoot it out. Of course, everything was just loose in my toy box. So I'm digging around for the bottom, like trying to scoop up these random plastic pizza discs. And I had collected about a dozen of them. I'm like, that should be plenty. And I'm ready to take my armload of toys out to the living room. Before I did, this little voice just kind of like passed through my head, said, hey, don't you want to get one more pizza? Like, why don't you get one more? And I'm like, no, this is plenty. This is fine. So I'm not going to, 12 should be more than enough. So then I go out to the living room and I play and I line up like all the bad guys and the turtles get on the pizza thrower and like they're shooting down the bad guys. And it gets down to there's one bad guy left standing and I'm out of pizzas. And I wish I had just one more. And then I remembered, I'm like, wait, something told me to grab one more. What was that? So I started noticing and paying attention more to when I would feel that, sense that, hear that. And because I was raised in a very religious, devout home, I could talk to my parents about it. And my mom was like, "Oh yeah, that's God. So next time you hear that, just say, speak, Lord, your servant is listening." Quoting something from the Old Testament.
Right.
And that's what happened. The next time, I think I was like laying in bed or something one night, and I heard that. And it really is like the Bible describes. It's like a still small voice. It's more like a whisper. It's like a gentle nudge you feel in your soul, in your heart, in your being. It's not an external audible thing. It's an energy, and a gentle, subtle one. You have to quiet and still your own mind and your own emotions and be at a place of centeredness and peace to a certain degree to be able to hear that and receive that. And I just happened to be in that kind of state. I'm laying in bed, winding down, and I heard that voice again. And so I said, "Speak, your servant's listening." And that kind of began the conversation. And ever since then, God and I and my angels, they're like friends who are around whenever you want someone to chat with.
Wow. Okay, I have a question about hearing that inner guidance, whether in Christianity or in the spiritual community. A lot of people have the same question. How do I hear God's voice, or how do I hear from my guides? And they'll try and try and try and just get so discouraged because they can't hear anything. And I've also had times in my life where I just could not. The connection didn't seem to be there. And I did end up figuring out for myself what I needed to do, but I'm curious what advice you would have for people who can't hear.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So there's probably a few points we need to talk about. So first, it's common. There are times when even with a lifetime of experience where it's like a muscle, it's very easy for me to do at this point. There's still times I can't tune in, I can't hear. And there are usually times when I'm very distraught, I'm really stressed out, there's a lot of strong emotions going on inside me. It's noise. If you think of think of it as like a radio, and you need to dial into the right station and turn up the volume to hear source, to hear your guides, whatever. But if you've got something else in your room with a big speaker blasting too much noise, doesn't matter if the radio's on and talking to you, you won't be able to hear it very clearly or at all. So, yeah, one of the keys I found is, and meditation will help with this, because meditation is over time will help you sort out your thoughts, help quiet down the mental chatter, and get you to a place of inner stillness and inner peace. And when you're in that inner stillness and peace, it's way easier to hear. The other thing is, it's more about being receptive and open than like striving and reaching out. Like if you try to force it, you're working against the current. You're making it harder for yourself than it needs to be. It's more about letting go and being open. And one time I actually asked God, why do more people not hear him? I use male pronouns because I'm used to, but I don't think God has a gender. Just a disclaimer there.
Right.
God is all and none and something else. So I asked, why don't more people hear God? And the answer I heard back kind of surprised me. And it was just, they're not listening. Most people don't take the time to be still and listen. And honestly, today with our modern technology, I was told that before social media, before cell phones, back when everyone still paid for cable TV because Netflix didn't exist yet. And nowadays we have so many distractions, so many interruptions, so much noise in our world and environment. I really, really honestly believe it's harder to hear God now or hear your guides now than it ever has been before in history. Because in the past, you had more downtime. You had more time to be still and reflect and to turn inward. We spent more time in nature. Nature is great because nature teaches you to be present. So maybe this is a trick to try, like go out to a park, go to the woods or something, and just sit, be still, turn off your cell phone for a while. Don't bring a book. Don't bring your MP3 player. Just be quiet, be still in nature. You can observe nature, look around, like listen to the birds, look at the leaves blowing in the wind, whatever. But nature has this effect of kind of grounding you to yourself, to the present moment, and that will certainly help make it easier to connect. But yeah, I think really the key is however you get there. It's about being open, it's about being still, and it's about quieting the interruptions both internally, your own mental chatter, and any external distractions and stimulation. And then the last point I want to say, as if this wasn't challenging enough sometimes, just because you think you hear something doesn't mean you're actually hearing an angel or God, because sometimes we want something so bad or we're expecting a certain answer. Your own imagination will play tricks on you. Your own ego, your own mind will sound like that same voice to give you an answer so that you feel like, oh, I'm finally talking to something. So it's like, well, how do you tell the difference? How do you tell when it's real and how when it's not, when it's just your own imagination or ego? And what I've learned over the years from lots of trial and error and experience is I now, whenever it's important to know if this is a real connection or not, is if it's coming from an angel, a spirit guide, from God, from Jesus, whatever, the message, the energy of it will include a feeling of peace, of unconditional love, of support, of nurturing, of calmness, of beauty. Like, even if God's telling me something I don't want to hear, I'm not going to like, there's this love, this gentleness, this support, almost like you're being hugged or held when you're being told that. It never makes me feel like crap. It never makes me feel like less than or a bad person or guilt or shame or anything like that. That's ego, that's pre-programming, that's someone else's voice that got trapped in your head. When you're hearing angels or God or Jesus or any kind of spirit guide, it's wise, it's gentle, it's nurturing, it's patient, it's unconditionally loving and supportive of you, whatever it's telling you, and you will feel that. So now I know to look for that feeling of love and peace to come with the message, and then I know I can trust it.
Thank you so much for breaking that all down for us. I think that will be really helpful. I love everything you said, and I specifically love what you said at the end. I found that to be true for myself also, that when it is my angels or my guides or whatever word we're going to use, it has a very specific energy signature.
Right.
And it's almost like, it's also like I tune into a frequency, like I'm
Yes.
tuning in, and the more you do it, it's like a muscle. You just know where to look.
Yeah. What we're talking about is spiritual discernment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these are great pointers that will help anyone listening, but it's also going to come down to just experience. Like, you'll just learn, okay, this is the energy signature, this is the frequency, this is the feeling, the vibe that I know is always consistent and always comes with the messages that turn out to be true, that are loving and supportive and all that. And then there'll be other times where it's like you didn't feel that. Well, maybe it was your guide, maybe it was your ego, maybe it was just something else. Our imaginations are, the brain is complex and amazing and beautiful what it's capable of. And we still don't fully understand all that it can do and how consciousness works and all that. There's going to be a little bit of trial and error. So if you think you hear a voice telling you to sell everything you own and move to Africa to do missionary work or something like that, maybe that's your calling, maybe that's your thing, but make major life changes or do something you can't recover from if it goes wrong just because you heard a voice one time in your head. Because what I've also found is if I'm not hearing the message or I'm ignoring it or I'm not acting on it or whatever, it'll stay consistent. It'll keep repeating. It'll get gradually louder and louder over time if it becomes more and more urgent for me to take that action. But it'll always have that peace, that tranquility, that love, that support energy with it. But it'll just get bigger, louder, and it'll be consistent over time. Whenever it's not consistent, I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. In hindsight, I could see that was actually just my imagination.
Wonderful. Thank you again for breaking that down for us. I would like to switch gears and talk about your spiritually transformative experiences. And I'm sure we probably don't have enough time to cover all of them, but maybe we could start with one that's been the most meaningful to you.
One of them caught me. Well, I mean, they all kind of catch you by surprise. You can't like plan a spiritually transformative experience, but I haven't shared this story anywhere else. And it's very meaningful, significant to me personally. So when I was, I don't know, my late teens, I guess, maybe 19, 20 at the latest, somewhere around there. I think it was earlier than that. I was really questioning my faith and beliefs. And even though I'd been talking to God my whole life at that point, I was still like, no, you're not real. I would argue to God, telling him that he wasn't real and that it was all in my head and it only works because I believe it does. And it's self-fulfilling prophecies, that kind of thing. And I I just kept arguing to God that none of this was real and I didn't believe it and it was all fake and it required our belief to have any value at all. And God very gently, lovingly, nurturing, patiently was like, it's okay, you're working through stuff, you're figuring it out, but I'm going to prove to you that I'm real and that our connection is real, that you are hearing me. And I'm like, nope, you can't. It's just because you need me to choose to believe it and I'm not going to, kind of thing. And one weekend, there was some charismatic religious preacher leader of some kind was coming through town and doing like some big event at the church or something. It was like a weekend long thing. And, the family was going to it. And the whole time I'm like, I had to go because the family was going and I was kind of there under protest and resistant to the whole thing. I'm like, this is all BS. And that whole weekend, God kept telling me, again, very gently, very lovingly, it's a very nurturing tone. And he kept saying, this weekend, I'm going to break you. And I'm like, can't. I'm not going to give you the opportunity. You could only break me if I let you, and you're not, and because you're fake, you're not real. And throughout the entire weekend, he kept telling me that I'm going to break you. I'm going to break you this weekend. And we got to like towards the end of Sunday. And they had at the end of it, if you wanted to get up and receive like a healing or blessing, you can kind of get in a line and the preacher would like lay their hands on you and do some kind of blessing or something. And normally prior in my life, like I want to experience everything I can spiritually. Like if there's a chance to be close to God or something supernatural, like I want to get my hands on, I want to experience it. I want to connect to it. And normally my instinct would be like, yep, let's get in that line. Just whether something happens or not, I want to try. And then I'm like, nope, that's asking for it. That's giving God a chance. If God is God, if God is real, he will be able to break me if I sit here and do nothing with my arms crossed. And I was just sitting in the back of the church and I'm watching everyone else go up in line. And I'm like, yep, nope, you can't do it, God. You're not real. I'm proving to you, you can't break me. You're not real. And then he said that one day I was going to make it back home. I was going to return back home to heaven. And I burst into tears, like ugly crying, uncontrollable sobbing. That moment in my life, I wasn't even consciously aware that that was even a question in my mind. Because I was raised Catholic, I went to church, I received the Eucharist, I led a Bible study as a teenager. Like I was close to God my whole life. Like I never ever questioned, had any doubt, because I believed in Jesus. I was saved. Like it was a sure thing that I was going to heaven when I died. And I had no clue that beneath all that, there was actually doubt. There's actually fear that I wasn't, that I might not, or that in my truth seeking and my questioning my beliefs, like I might leave Christianity and end up on some other path and be fooled by false prophets or whatever. Maybe I was saved now, but then I would be rejecting Jesus and I would go to hell later. Or like I wasn't even consciously aware that that was going on a deeper level inside me. And God simply said, I'm going home one day. I cried and cried and cried. I finally like calmed down and the tears stopped. And he would say that exact sentence again. And it would happen all over again. I would just keep crying and crying and crying. My mom was there and, God bless her. She had no clue what was going on. She just knows that I'm just sitting there and all of a sudden start crying for no reason. And, she tried to cover me and put her hand on me and said some prayers or whatever. But it was a spiritually transformative moment for me because I didn't even realize that that was a doubt, a question in my mind. It was so healing and comforting and reassuring to know I'm not going to be on earth forever, and I am going to go back to this home that I remembered from my pre-birth memories kind of thing. And it proved God was real. God could break me even if I didn't give him a single opportunity.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, when it happened, I was like, take me now. I don't want to stay on earth 1 minute longer. Like it was this can be a lonely planet. This can be very tough. I mean, this is not news to anybody watching this channel. And I begged God, like, I can't do this anymore. Take me now. I want to go home now. And he actually said we could, because I was here voluntarily. I could leave whenever I chose I was done. But he said if I chose to stay, there'd be a lot of people I would help still later in the rest of my life. And would I stay to help them? And I was like, fine, yes. Like, So yeah, I haven't had a near death experience, an NDE, but I know there's parallels a lot of times where people, they experience heaven, they experience that oneness, that unconditional love, and then their guide's like, you got to go back, and they're like, I don't want to.
Right.
And a lot of times it's like, okay, if you don't, here's how it's going to affect your kids or your family, or if you do, here's a glimpse of what your mission, your work, the good you can do in the world. And then out of an act of love, they choose, okay, you know what, I'm going to go back and continue that earth life to spread more love, to spread more light in the world. And just recently I was in a Facebook group and someone was sharing how, like, earth sucks and the love here is never good enough. It doesn't compare to what it's like on the other side. And just there's too much pain and suffering in the world. There's too little love in the world. And I replied, because I genuinely believe this, like, it's our job to put more love and light into the world. Certainly anyone who watches a channel like yours, you're curious, you're spiritually aligned, you're looking for answers and the truth and connection. We're light workers, we're lovers, we're healers, we're world changers, whether it's just one person's life you're making a difference in, or you're on a global scale, or anywhere in between. That one life makes a difference, and it ripples out, because we're all interconnected. From a different spiritually transformative experience I had, I saw how we were all interconnected. That there's
can you share that one?
So I'll share that one real fast. So one night I woke up at like 3 a.m. or something, just randomly. And I've been going through some really emotionally challenging times in my life. And it was a healing experience for me. It kind of released some of the baggage I was carrying and kind of renewed my spirit, because I didn't know it at the time, but there was more hard times coming. So it kind of gave me the strength to handle that and keep going. But what happened was I all of a sudden felt like I was expanding beyond my body. I was expanding outside my body. It wasn't like an out-of-body experience where, like, you step out of your body and you turn around and, like, see yourself laying there. It was more like my awareness, my whole being, my consciousness just was growing, just expanding outward infinitely. And I was still connected to my body, but also so much more. And it rapidly just kind of, this awareness, my soul grew to the size of the universe. And I felt one with the universe. I felt that a piece of me was in everyone and everything, like, and not just people, but like in inanimate things, rocks or plants or anything, animals, everything that exists. A little piece of me was in all of it. And all of those, a little piece of them was in me. And I really felt how there's this interconnection throughout all of creation. We don't see it. We don't feel it while we're in these bodies, because I think it's a feature, not a bug. Part of us being in a body is to experience individuality and an ego and me being separate from others. I think that's on purpose. I think there's reasons for that. But in this moment, this experience, I saw it's like, okay, but that's just when my consciousness is focused inside that body. But really, even though it's kind of hard to understand with our physical human brains, there is overlap, there is interconnection, there's shared pieces between all of us while also still being our own thing. We have our own consciousness, our own choices, our own awareness, but you're not isolated. You're not alone. You're not an island. And I also saw that some people who had really hurt me, some people I was very angry at, that I saw as the enemy, as an abuser, as whatever, I saw that our souls are a piece of God, a piece of source, an extension of that. And I think that's maybe how we're all interconnected. It's that there's one source, there's God, that then branched off into infinity, and we're the branches. But if you trace it back to the trunk, to the roots or whatever, like it's the same source. We are all part of the same tree, to use this metaphor, but each one of us is our own little twig, our own little branch. So it looks like when we're looking at each other side by side, we're separate. But when you look at the big picture, we're actually part of the same thing. And I saw how a piece of God was in me, making up part of my soul, and a piece of God was in everyone else's soul, making up part of what they are. And like I said, there's the individual part, like we get to be our own selves. I think that's part of the plan too. But there's overlap. There's, if you do like a Venn diagram or something, there's a piece of it that we all share in common, which is God. And God loves all of us because we're all an extension of God. We're all part of God. We all have a piece of God in us. And that's why God loves us all and wants us all and invites us all back home, because we're all the same family. We're all part of it. These people who I was angry at, who had been hurting me or whatever, I saw God in them. And I saw how much God loved them. And I saw how a piece of me was in them and a piece of them was in me. And I'm like, oh man, I don't like the actions they have done to me in these human bodies. But on a spiritual level, I have to love and forgive them because it's loving God. It's loving myself. It's just unavoidable. You can't hate one person and love God because that's a part of God. So it really helped me to forgive, to have empathy, to understand. Again, in the physical, they're still doing bad things to me. And that didn't mean I had to put up with abuse, leave bad relationships. I'm not saying put up with it just because God is in everything. Part of it is loving and protecting yourself so that you can be healthy and whole and healed, so you can put more love into the world. But on a soul level, on a divine perspective, I couldn't hate them either.
David, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. And I just want to say, I think you really have a gift for explaining spiritual concepts in a way that's easy to understand. So thank you for breaking
Thanks
all
for that
these
feedback.
things down. Yeah, absolutely. Would you like to share with the viewers where they can get in touch with you or find out more about you? Because there's so much we didn't cover today, and maybe someone would like to go watch another interview or something and learn more.
Yeah. I mean, as you mentioned at the beginning of the episode, for a living, I'm an actor, writer, director. So you can learn about me on my website, davidmakesmagic.com. It's got my acting resume and demo reel and stuff like that on there. But it also has my blog, which just has positive, uplifting, inspirational messages about life and love and following your dreams and that kind of thing. I want to inspire and encourage and empower people. And there's also a page on there, I think it's called like In the Media or something like that, where any podcasts I've been on before, some of them have been like entertainment career related and some of them are more spiritual related. They're all on one website right now because it's just who I am. I do both. So yeah, all that's on there. And my social media links and email and stuff is on that website as well.
Perfect. So I'll have that website in the description. Also, I love your website title, David Makes Magic. I love that. So that will be in the description. David, thank you so much for having this conversation.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I enjoyed connecting with you, and yeah, just thanks for the work you do. You're spreading a lot of light and love through your channel, through the people you bring on and sharing their messages. Like, you're doing great work in the world. So, I mean, seriously, keep it up. You're doing great.
Thank you so much. And right back at you. Thank you for being willing to share your experiences and talk about these spiritual topics that are so important for people to understand.
Yeah, thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you for watching the Love Covered Life podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and comment with your thoughts and opinions, and check the description box for the links to my free community where I share lots of resources, my Pay What You Can community where we do classes and challenges together, my TikTok, Instagram, my Clips channel, and lovecoveredlife.com where I share my paintings. Thank you so much for your support.